that to do it. And that's where I want to start. Because when I found out the results of my DNA test on both the matriarchal and patriarchal sides, I found out that I was 98.9 connected to Nigeria and the Yoruba tribe. And on the other side, I was with Ghana and the Akan people. And that was 99.4. So I believe that there's a whole lot of questions, but that my roots do go back to the mother country. And I want to share just another short little piece about that because I go to a Catholic church in Largo, Maryland, St. Joseph Catholic Church. And I've been going there a little over 50 years. But about 30 years ago, a gentleman who was born in Nigeria and is of the Yoruba tribe, he came to the church and he joined the gospel choir, which my wife was the founder of and the director. And in the course of that, he became very good friends with her, so much so that he asked if she would represent him when he went to citizenship. And later did the same when he married and his wife came. So I've been knowing the family over 30 years, and it is like a close relative. I'm godparent to his 3 children, have seen them from birth to finishing college and getting married. And so when I got the results, the first thing that I did was on Sunday morning when I went to church, and I said, John, his name happened to be John also, and I said, John, I got to tell you something. I said, I just got results back that said that I'm connected to Nigeria and to Yoruba, and I knew he was because we talked about that on a number of occasions. And I have to just say to you, as I was telling you that, it was all I could do. I'm one of these men that you ain't supposed to cry and ain't supposed to show no kind of emotion like that. But frankly, I got quite emotional. And finally I said to John, I said, you know, it was ordained that we would become close friends. And I believe that. It is there. It said at some point I was going to have that opportunity. So that's my connection to Africa. That's only one part of the work that we've done on tracing our roots. We used Ancestry.com to trace my roots here in America. And I've had a lot of help. I have a niece that is really considered the genealogist of the family. And so she has done a tremendous amount of work over the last really almost 20 years. Because every year that we come together at Thanksgiving, and she will come to Washington 2 or 3 days ahead, and she will spend that time going around and getting information. She got information from the Census Bureau. She got information from the War Department. You know, surprisingly, at least certainly I didn't know at the time that our people fought in the Revolutionary War, fought in the Civil War. And whenever you are in one of the military things, they keep the records. And so she began doing a lot of going back and tracing that, and so it created a good bit of information about my side of the family as well as my wife's side of the family. So we have a great deal of information. But the part that has been really significant was that I found out that my great-great-grandfather, he lived in Hagerstown, Maryland. And in, I guess it was 1839, he left from Hagerstown with his wife, check this, and 14 children on their way to freedom. And he left there and found the Underground Railroad route. He traveled with the 16 of them over 400 miles. They walked, they rode in little wagons, they got on steamships, whatever manner that you could, they traveled through Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and into Michigan, into Detroit, and then crossed the Detroit River, winding up in Annenberg, Canada. It is a fascinating story, and as we continue to pursue this, we got real documentation because we found, particularly my daughter, found a woman who had an article that appeared in the Lansing, Michigan Journal. And that article described my great-grandfather's journey and had his obituary when he passed away at 102 years old. In the book, I have a copy of that article and the death certificate. So I'm not going to let nobody tell me that I can't trace my stuff back to slavery. Because my people did the job. They did the work. And recently, my daughter and I had the opportunity to go to Hagerstown, and we had a book reading in Hagerstown, and I stood on the very ground where they left from, and it was right in front of the AME church, because that was the church that helped lots of folks seeking freedom, particularly through the Underground Railroad. And as I stood there, and my youngest son was with us, and he was videotaping us standing in front of a plaque. And once again, it was so emotional, just the thought that here I was now in 2026, standing on the very ground that my ancestors left from. It's that kind of thing that I say has made my sense of who I am and who I come from and the quality of people. And so I now can realize that it's no accident in many ways that was a counselor, and then went to work for the National Education Association, which represented teachers. So I also know that they had some very strong values. And I know those values were passed down to me along with the other members of the family. I also want to just say how important that I believe that family is. I mean, sometimes we don't always get along, we have this thing and that thing, but when push comes to shove, that's where we go, is we go to family. And that's why I think it's so important what you're doing by being here tonight, and this being, I think, said the 41st reunion of the Canty family. And I certainly hope you continue that and continue to do the things that was in that moment. I also just want, because I don't want to talk long, because I could talk a while. I'm a good storyteller. And that's what the book is about. And you'll have an opportunity, because I'll put some books up here, and before we adjourn today, this evening, we'll have an opportunity to look at it. My daughter and I were very conscious about a number of things as we put the book together. And we have been blessed by being able to have a tremendous number of photos. So when I talk about my ancestors, they right here, you're going to see them on both sides. And I credit my mother and two of my aunts for keeping the albums. Y'all know about them albums, don't you? Don't y'all have some of those albums that have the pictures of everybody in them? I just saw the picture sitting on the table there, and you got the pictures on the other table. Those are the things you treasure. And sometimes some of us don't pay attention to it, and we let it get away from us. We were also blessed by the fact that I know I had an opportunity to spend time with my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side before they both passed, because I took care of them in the last year of their life. And I had the opportunity to talk to them, have them talk about Uncle Buck, Fanny. Y'all can start talking about the names of the ancestors that y'all know about. I would even encourage you, if you haven't been doing it, with some of them that are still here, and there are a few of them, because I done met some of them in here who've been here a little while. Y'all better get your tape recorder, sit down, talk with them, get that stuff recorded so that you can be able to write about your ancestors and have the true facts. So, again, I want to close because, as I said, I believe family is so important. And I've been blessed to have had a very supportive wife, partner, and before she passed, 63 years. But that's pretty much the way it is with the Leeke family, or the Roberts family, or the Garten family, because they, once they, get married, it's for life. Now, I have 4 children, when I was writing the book, I sort of did at the end of the book, I asked each of them to write a little something about what reflections they have of me, their father. teenager I am today is directly influenced by Dad's relationship with Mom and with my brothers and sisters. I will forever be thankful for having him as a role model as well as a trusted counselor. My daughter, who's the second and the only girl, she said, there are moments I can remember when he showed up in my defense as only a girl dad could. Like the time he met with the two nuns at my all-girls Catholic high school and told them in his loud black man voice that they were racist due to their mistreatment of me and the other members of the Awareness Black Club. Now, she's the one that co-authored the book with me. My second son name is Mark. By the way, her name is Madeline, but she has changed it a couple times. She went from what we named her. We named her Madeline, sure. So I refer to her quite often as Madeline, sure. But she also carries Kiansha. That had to do with, as she started to get in touch with who she was and all. And then she took on the name Anand. And that's pretty much what we all go. However, being like I said, the girl said, I nicknamed her Puff. And that's because she was like Puff the Magic Dragon. But Mark came along and he says, as an adult, my relationship with my father has grown into both mentor and friend. Dad has been there for me countless times with professional advice on how to successfully supervise in the workplace as a person of color. And finally, my youngest boy, who is Matthew, he said, as a husband, Dad has given me a great blueprint for marriage. Commitment, honesty, communication, and compromise are some of the keys demonstrated by my parents. Theirs is a partnership that is equal and unique. They are not perfect people, but their love is. I know it is possible because I have been lucky to see it with my own eyes. I am very proud to be his son. Now, I'm extremely proud that I'm their father. And I have to believe that their mother and I did a fairly good job getting them to the place where they are. They're gainfully employed. They don't live with me. I do not financially support them. And so far I haven't had to ask them for any financial support. But I just want to conclude by saying, as we wrote the book, we were conscious that we should not write it with small print. So there's good size print. Makes it a little easier to read. We also thought about the fact that I wanted to be able to recognize and acknowledge some of the people that had influence in me. So as each chapter starts, I've used a quote from one of those folks. And I want to share the quote that was in there for chapter 1. And that one was the person that I probably give a great deal of credit for how I have become. And that is W.E.B. Du Bois. he said, and chapter 1 is The People I Come From, that's the title. He said, I believe in pride of race and lineage and self, in pride of self so deep as to scorn injustice to other selves. And the book also has tons of photos, and I close out with 10 lessons learned that I want to have shared. Now, I wrote the book primarily because I wanted to leave something for my kids. And it started out by my just thinking, well, I wrote a letter to my daughter, and I presented it to her on her birthday, and told her that I wanted to tell her a few things that she might not know about. And then, as we had lunch on her birthday, she said, well, what about your sons? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And so I said, well, I'm going to do that. So then I wrote a letter to all of them. And then I got to thinking, maybe I could write a book. I struggle with getting over that because I'm not somebody that takes to writing books. I wrote a lot of things, but not about my life. So this now represents, I'm now 87 years old, and I even talk about what life has been like in retirement. So I'll stop there. I don't know, Michael, is there time for any questions? Okay. So I want to again, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my book, and after things are later, I'll have them up here on this table, and you can come up, and I'll be here the rest of the evening if anybody wants to engage. Thank you.